All right, cool. We are recording now. I will share my screen. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So today I'm going to talk about the CDK. It's commonly referred to as the CDK. It's the Cloud Development Kit. And I think many people, including myself, consider it to be the future of infrastructure as code. As I'm sure you've heard me say before, and I'm sure many others have said in these meetings, everything should be defined as code. When you're creating infrastructure by hand, it has many flaws. It's slow, error-prone, inconsistent, not scalable, not repeatable, difficult to document, and difficult to iterate. I'm sure there's even other downsides to it that I did not list here, but yeah, basically everything, everything should be defined as code, just like in your application. Everything is code. Everything in your infrastructure and the standing up of your servers, containers, Lambda functions, whatever it is, should be defined as code as well, so it can be iterated upon, and another environment can be spun up when needed, and usually it should be self-documenting as well. That brings us to the infrastructure as code options. I've used CloudFormation, Terraform, and now CDK. And honestly, I don't think I have any complaints about CDK. I've been very impressed with it. But yeah, as a general overview, CloudFormation, you can define your infrastructure in JSON or YAML. So it's familiar languages or syntaxes. Terraform uses a proprietary language called HashiCorp configuration language, while CDK allows you to define your infrastructure in programming languages that you already know, use, and very familiar with. And then using these programming languages allow you to use all of the language's functionality, like loops and if statements, and your CDK setup can be included in your unit testing as well, which is very nice. So then I wanted to give an example of CloudFormation, Terraform, and the CDK, so you can see how it's different. So the first example, and in each we're creating a VPC, which is a virtual private cloud in AWS. The first example here is CloudFormation. CloudFormation is very verbose. It's very long. It did not fit in my screenshot. I'm showing the what VS Code calls the mini map here on the right hand side, and there you can see the gray part is what's currently being shown in the main part of the screen, while this shows how much else there is. So defining a VPC is a lot of lines in YAML or JSON using CloudFormation. The next example is Terraform. Terraform is a lot more concise. As you can see, it all fits on the screen. But and then using CDK, I'm sure if you've heard me talk in these meetings before, you know I'm a big fan of Python, so I usually do examples in Python. But this can be done in Java, Go, C#, Node.js as well. So this is how creating a VPC looks in AWS CDK using Python. And when you go to the other languages, it's very similar. So it's just like you would do anything else in that language, except you have your CDK imports. So some CDK terminology. CDK uses the term construct to refer to the basic building blocks of a CDK application. Level 1 constructs are actually the CloudFormation resource being made available in the CDK. So that's actually done automated. My understanding is no one at AWS does that by hand. It's an automated process that turns all CloudFormation resources into a level 1 construct in CDK, and its name is just CFN, then whatever the resource is named. Then level 2 constructs adds a level of abstraction with some default settings and sometimes some supporting functionality, makes them easy to use. So when a new item is added to the CDK, it's first only available to level 1. Later, the level 2 is added. And if there's a level 2 available and it's working, it's always advised to go with that because it's a lot cleaner and a lot easier. And then level 3 constructs are just like CloudFormation and Terraform modules. You can share them, you can build your own, and there's 2 websites I listed here that you download other constructs that other people have created, but you can also create your own to abstract out, basically like you would create a class in the programming language, to abstract out reusable code so you're not repeating the code over and over within your CDK. And another piece, I guess it might be on a later slide, but I wanted to cover, when CDK runs, it actually synthesizes your code to CloudFormation and then uses the AWS CloudFormation service to apply it. So you could still see your stacks through the CloudFormation console, but when you're maintaining it, it's just a lot cleaner. And then you could do just a couple lines, do some level 2 constructs, and that will render your CloudFormation. And I'm going to show that in an example at the end. So I also wanted to clarify that CDK is not just AWS. While I've mostly only worked with the AWS stuff, and I'm talking about AWS. There's also CDKs, which is for Kubernetes. Terraform also has a version of the CDK, and then there's ProGen, which is a very cool idea that that AWS has recently kicked off an open source project to give back to the community, in which you can manage your projects through the CDK, and by projects, I'm referring to like a Maven project or a Python project, JavaScript project, and then you can have one file in which you manage it, and then it will manage your file, like your Maven file and your gitignore file. So I have not tried it out yet, but a lot of people are excited about it because they do not miss managing those individual files, like package JSON as well. So now I want to get to our demo. So here I created a sample project. I wanted to show the first file that runs is when you run the CDK, it runs the app.py file. It's actually, there's a file that tells it that this is a default. It's CDK JSON, but yeah, by default, and it runs app.py, and I have no desire or reason to change that, so I keep it that way. You could, of course, you could define your classes right in here, but it's common to have them in a separate file to extract them out. I am not going to do the VPC, EC2, and ECS stuff. This is actually the code that I used to stand up the infrastructure for the session manager demo I did a couple weeks ago. I'm not going to do those because those take longer to spin up, but I'm just going to do a Lambda today, and you can see it's going to create a Lambda stack in AWS, and this is the actual Lambda stack. So the first time I want to comment out this line, so when we first spin it up, we will have the Lambda does not have permissions to the S3 bucket, and then I'm going to show how easy it is to give the Lambda permissions to the S3 bucket. And then this is the Lambda that runs, and all it's going to do is try to list the contents of an S3 bucket, and if I'm actually catching an exception for when it gets access denied, so we can return the access denied message. But now I will go to the terminal, and you can do CDK ls, and that actually lists all of your stacks. It will only list the Lambda stack because the others are commented out. If you run CDK synth, it will return the CloudFormation. So you don't have to look at this level, but you have the ability to. And especially on like one of my projects right now, I am converting a previously CloudFormation project to CDK. So then the synth option is very helpful because you can see what it's generating, and my goal would be for it to generate identical CloudFormation to before, so that we know that nothing was missed in the process. You can also, so usually when I run CDK synth, I should probably actually just alias it on my computer, but when I run CDK synth, I add these two options because there's a lot of metadata that gets returned with it. And then it looks more familiar. So with those two options, path metadata false and version reporting false, then it exactly has the CloudFormation that I would have written before looks, for the most part. That metadata is to help the CDK development team in metrics and the use of the product telemetry. That's my understanding. But yeah, it just injects metadata in CloudFormation, and then they can run reporting on it. But it's of no value when we're doing the synth on our laptops. So now let's do CDK Deploy. And when you have it asks for confirmation, you could also pass an option to do require approval never, but by default, it asks for permission to proceed whenever you're making an IAM change, because it's permission, so that could be risky if you don't trust the code. There's also, when you have multiple stacks, you have to provide the stack name when you do CDK deploy, or provide -- all to tell it to deploy all stacks. But since we only have one stack currently, it knows which one we want to do. So this takes about 2 minutes. Did anyone have any questions while we wait for this? So as sure I've said, I'm a big fan of CDK. I even am a fan of this terminal process, because if you've deployed through the terminal before, you usually don't have a progress bar, and I probably way too impressed with the progress bar. But yeah, it scrolls. You don't get your terminal scrolling like in other processes I've seen. So you just get like 5 lines here, and then the overall progress bar. And then I've added outputs to the to the CDK stack, so we can easily test our Lambda. So now it's finished. Gave us the outputs. I'm going to right click on the URL and choose Open URL. And as expected, we get an error has occurred, access denied, because the Lambda does not have permissions to the S3 bucket. So then if we just go back to our code, and I have the line right here, but I'll type it because I want to show IntelliSense. It's pretty cool. Grant.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Does the CloudFormation code that CDK produces, is it persisted in CloudFormation as a entity, or is it just transient? It's created, executes, and then disappears.
No. Well, as long as your stack is created, it. Let me make sure I'm logged. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. I need to make sure I'm logged into the AWS console. Yeah, it. Sorry, I should have done this before. Yeah, as long as your stack exists, it is there. So from the CloudFormation console, you cannot tell that it was a CDK stack. Actually, there's probably some metadata that you could tell, but from the high level, it looks exactly the same as if you did it directly in CloudFormation.
Okay, thank you.
All right, no problem. All right, can you see my screen again?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So if we browse to CloudFormation, you can see our stack right here, and the CDK toolkit. It's CDK has a bootstrap command in which it creates a CDK toolkit. It's only required to support some stacks like Lambda stack, because for a Lambda stack it has to upload code, so it needs to create a bucket that it can upload the code to. So now back in the editor, it's just doing bucket name dot grant, and then IntelliSense will give me options to complete it, and then I can do. Ooh. So now we're going to take the S3 bucket that's being created, grant read permissions, and then grant it to the Lambda. And it's really nice because, in my opinion, this list bucket Lambda, it needs to run as an IAM role, but we are not creating the IAM role by hand. It's just being created behind the scenes. You can create it by hand and then specify as a parameter here to use this IAM role. But since we did not provide one, it just created one with the minimum permissions that a Lambda needs to run. Then when we did my bucket grant read and pointed it to this, it knows the Lambda is not actually a resource that can have read permissions applied to. It needs to be applied to the IAM role, and it knows to do that. So it makes the code a lot cleaner, and I like to keep things simple, and I really like default options that are logical. So then here, I'll clear the screen, run CDK diff just to show. And then this shows the change that's going to occur. We did not have to run CDK diff, but it's nice to confirm what you believe is going to happen. And it's going to read get bucket, get object, and list option. And now we run CDK deploy again. It's going to ask us for permissions to make this change. We will proceed. While this runs, we can go back to the console, and you see this is the Lambda stack that we deployed, and we're actually currently updating. So it's just update in progress. But if you go to template, so this just, as you can see, this is just a CloudFormation template, so you cannot tell it's CDK. I'm guessing if you go to, you can see, you can get hints that it's CDK because, like for parameters, it needs that CDK toolkit bucket, so it has a place to upload the code to. These are the outputs I put to help in the terminal. And then this, CDK metadata to help AWS inform this project and future enhancements. This has been a very active project. Every couple days I see a update ready to install.
Yeah, this is really powerful, John, because from our experience, writing up those CloudFormation templates can take hours, and it's very excruciating to make minor updates, add additional resources, copy paste, blah blah blah. Yeah, this is really cool. Are you going to have a slide later that shows some of the limitations of CDK? Like, are there some resources that are not supported by CDK yet? Do you have something like that you can share with us?
I do not. Like I said earlier, I don't think there's anything about the CDK I dislike. AWS has an automated process to make CloudFormation resources available in the CDK. So, I guess one thing, there's a lot of documentation. So if I Google AWS CDK, you can just see my autocomplete's already there. There's so much documentation. It seems to be a JavaScript first type project, but then they translate it to other languages. So the examples are the best in TypeScript / JavaScript, and but I try to go with Python. But a lot of times I need to convert examples. Let me pick one of these.
Can you actually pick one for creating a Route 53 alias?
Sure.
Because I remember I always been like, curious like that to me. Oh, there's Route 53 targets. So you can create an A record.
Yeah.
So it's all there in the CDK, and it gives you example, like you said, and
when A CloudFormation resource first comes over. It comes over as a CFN resource. Let me just find the name for one of them. Okay, here I'm importing API gateway.cfn. Yeah, so everything comes over as a CFN resource at first, which is just the CloudFormation resource exactly. So any parameter that needed to be supplied to CloudFormation needs to be supplied to that. Later, they created a level 2 resource, which level 2 construct that has a lot of default settings, sometimes some supporting functionality, so it makes it a lot cleaner.
Gotcha. And this is Visual Source Code, and you installed a plugin for CDK and Visual Source Code? Maybe you
I
already
did
said that
not.
earlier.
I
Oh,
just have the libraries installed, and the
oh,
IntelliSense
okay.
automatically picks them up,
Picks
as
them
long
up.
as you have it
Cool.
pointed to the right Python path. Python in my case.
Awesome.
So if we go back to the terminal, you can right click on this and choose Open URL now. And now we get empty brackets because we now have our Lambda function now has permissions to that S3 bucket, but there's nothing there. So in the outputs, it's not a normal thing you would do. I just did it for this demo. I just gave myself the syntax to copy my requirements file as file 1 to that bucket. And now if we refresh, we see that there's file 1 is now in that bucket. Another thing I want to show is clear the screen, run PyTest. This is just some simple unit test. It just has 2 unit tests right now. But yeah, being able to run unit test against infrastructure as code is an awesome change. I have not personally seen that before. And it's very simple. All it's doing right now is doing the synth, which returns the template, and confirming that this object and this object is here. So it's actually doing against the VPC stack, which is our main, is currently commented out. And I think the last thing I want to show is destroying the stack. So I'll clear the screen, CDK Destroy. And so, yeah, you also never need to go into the console. I mean, we went into the console to look at a couple things, but you usually do not need to go. And so now in multiple projects, I am using the AWS CDK, and in my opinion, it has made it very quick to make changes. And just like infrastructure as code in general, I'm a big fan of having everything in the repository so that everything's tracked. And if you can easily iterate on it, make changes, do whatever you need to do, share it with the team, and the code should be, for the most part, self-documenting. So hopefully you don't have to write too much documentation to go along with it, as the code hopefully should be clear on what you're doing. Did anyone have any questions?
Can I can I share a quick comment? So one great use case I see here, John, especially at CSBS, if for example we were using CDK instead of writing raw CloudFormation, is like when we introduce a additional microservice, right? Another Java app into our cluster. And if we wrote everything in CDK as functions to say, okay, for this microservice, create a target, create the actual resource, the task definition, create this and that, and let's say most of it for all the microservices share the same general set of parameters and so forth. So you could create a set of functions in CDK, and you pass it the specific parameters that make it unique to create this new microservice, to create all the supporting AWS resources to support that microservice. And you don't have to keep on redoing the same stuff. You just pass in the parameters, make the calls to those functions, right? This is one of the biggest advantages of CDK, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah. You're not copying and pasting the same block of CloudFormation over and over. Uh, you abstract it out to a level 3 construct, and then you can reuse it. So that's actually what I'm doing on one of our CSBS projects. Lambda, API gateway path, Splunk, forwarder, it's all the same for every different route. So I'm not repeating that. I'm going to parameterize it and then pass those the necessary parameters for each one.
Awesome.
So I'm a big fan how it makes the code so much smaller. So because there's so much more reuse. And then yeah, when I created this slide to show CloudFormation and how verbose it is in creating a VPC, Terraform was a big improvement, but then the CDK is very nice as well. So yeah, I think yeah, I'm a big fan of the AWS CDK, and it's also cool how they're partnering with Terraform and Kubernetes and Progen. So it should move beyond AWS. Cool. Does anyone have anything else? All right. Well, thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you. This is awesome. Thank you.